The neon sign of the roadside diner flickered in the cold evening air somewhere on the outskirts of Toledo, Ohio. A group of bikers sat inside a corner booth, their leather jackets hanging loosely on the backs of chairs, steam rising from their coffee mugs. They were loud, laughing, and unwinding after a long ride, until the front door slowly creaked open. A boy stepped inside. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old. His clothes were thin for the winter, his shoes worn at the soles. He stood near the door, unsure whether to walk in or turn back. One of the bikers noticed him right away. The man, broad-shouldered with a gray beard and tired eyes, frowned. "Hey, kid," he called gently. "You hungry?" The boy nodded but didn't move. Another biker slid out of the booth, grabbed a sandwich from the counter, and placed it on a nearby table. "It's yours," he said. "No catch." The boy slowly approached, sat down, and ate as if he hadn't had a real meal in days. No one rushed him. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with his sleeve and looked around nervously, as if afraid someone might be watching through the window. That's when he spoke. "My grandma's in the basement," the boy said quietly. The laughter at the booth stopped. One biker chuckled awkwardly. "Basements are for storage, kid," he said. "You mean she's downstairs watching TV?" The boy shook his head. His fingers twisted together. "She's locked in," he whispered. "She's been there for days." The mood changed instantly. The bearded biker leaned forward, his voice low and calm. "Who locked her in, son?" The boy hesitated, eyes filling with fear. "My uncle," he said. "He said if I told anyone, bad things would happen." The bikers exchanged looks. No jokes now, no smiles. One of them glanced out the window, instinctively alert. Another pulled his phone from his pocket but didn't dial yet. "Why did he put her there?" the bearded biker asked. "She tried to call for help," the boy replied. "He got mad. He said she talks too much, and that no one would believe a kid anyway." A heavy silence fell over the table. The boy's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. He explained that his grandma was old and sick, that she needed medicine, and that the basement was dark and cold. Sometimes he slipped her water when his uncle wasn't home. Sometimes he couldn't. "You did the right thing coming here," the biker said firmly. "You're safe with us." Tears finally rolled down the boy's cheeks. Outside, the wind rattled the diner windows. Inside, a decision had already been made. This wasn't just a story. This was real, and the bikers knew one thing for sure. No one was riding away until they made sure that Grandma wasn't alone in the dark anymore. The bearded biker stood up slowly, pulling on his jacket. "All right," he said calmly, though his jaw was tight. "You're going to show us where you live." The boy hesitated. "He might come back," he whispered. "He won't hurt anyone tonight," another biker said firmly. "Not on our watch." They paid the bill, wrapped the boy in an extra jacket, and walked him outside. The engines of the motorcycles rumbled to life, breaking the silence of the empty street. The boy climbed onto the back of one bike, gripping the man's jacket tightly as they rolled toward a quiet neighborhood of aging houses and cracked sidewalks. The house stood at the end of the block, 2 stories, peeling paint, windows dark. No lights, no warmth. The boy pointed. "That's it." The bikers parked a short distance away. One immediately called the police, giving the address and explaining the situation with careful urgency. Another stayed with the boy, crouching down to his level. "You've been really brave," the biker said. "No matter what happens next, remember that." They approached the house cautiously. The front door was locked. One biker knocked hard. No answer. From inside, the house felt dead, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then they heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Slow, weak. From below, one biker said, his face hardening. The boy nodded. "She knocks when she thinks someone might hear." Without breaking anything, they waited, listening, staying calm. Minutes later, flashing red and blue lights washed over the street. Police cars pulled up, followed by an ambulance. Officers moved quickly, professionally, entering the house and heading straight for the basement door. When they opened it, a wave of cold air rushed out. Down in the dim basement sat an elderly woman on a thin mattress, wrapped in a torn blanket. Her face was pale, her lips dry, but her eyes opened when she heard voices. "She's alive," an officer called out. The boy ran forward but was gently stopped as paramedics rushed in. Tears streamed down his face, not from fear this time, but relief. One biker placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You did this," he said softly. "You saved her." The grandmother was carried upstairs carefully, her hand reaching out weakly until the boy took it. "I knew you'd tell someone," she whispered. The uncle was arrested later that night when he returned to the house, shocked to find police waiting. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. As the ambulance doors closed, one of the bikers handed the boy a piece of paper with a phone number. "Anytime you need help," he said, "you call." The engines roared again as the bikers rode off into the night, their taillights fading down the road. They hadn't planned on being heroes that evening. But sometimes, the road brings you exactly where you're needed most. Morning light filtered through the hospital window as the boy sat beside his grandmother's bed, holding her hand. Machines hummed softly, and for the first time in days, the room felt warm. The doctors said she was dehydrated and weak, but she would recover. Those words lifted a weight the boy had carried for far too long. A social worker spoke gently with him while a nurse brought breakfast. He answered questions honestly, about the basement, about his uncle, about the fear that never seemed to leave the house. No one raised their voice. No one told him to be quiet. For the first time, adults were listening. Later that day, the bikers returned. They didn't come roaring in this time. They walked into the hospital quietly, helmets in hand. The boy's eyes widened when he saw them. He jumped from his chair and ran toward them, hugging the bearded biker around the waist. "You came back," he said. "We said we would," the biker replied, smiling. They brought a small bag, clean clothes, a toy motorcycle, and a card signed with shaky handwriting. The grandmother's eyes filled with tears when she saw them. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You already did," one biker replied. "You raised a brave kid." In the days that followed, everything changed. The uncle remained in custody, and the house was declared unsafe. The boy and his grandmother were placed temporarily with a kind foster family nearby while arrangements were made for permanent care. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe, and that mattered most. One afternoon, as the boy sat on the front steps of his new place, he heard a familiar sound. Engines. The bikers pulled up one last time, sunlight glinting off chrome. The boy ran out, waving. They didn't stay long, just long enough to say goodbye. "Remember," the bearded biker said, kneeling down, "being strong doesn't mean being quiet. If something's wrong, you speak up." The boy nodded. "I will." As the bikes rode away, the boy didn't feel abandoned. He felt protected, like there were people in the world who would show up, even when they didn't have to. Weeks later, his grandmother moved into a small assisted living home, safe and cared for. The boy visited often, telling her about school, about his new room, about the toy motorcycle that sat proudly on his shelf. Sometimes, late at night, he thought about the basement, the darkness, the fear. But those memories slowly faded, replaced by the sound of engines, the warmth of a jacket around his shoulders, and the moment he realized help could come from the most unexpected places. Because that night at the diner didn't just save his grandmother. It saved him too.